Okay, looks like we're live. Um, I'm not going to. I have somewhere to be at like 4, so I'm definitely gonna um not go that long. Now, if I go that whole time, who knows? Maybe I lose track of time, but I don't know. I just had I had the idea for the thumbnail, so I figured I had to. I had to do this stream. I just thought it'd be so funny if I was talking about Gurdjieff to give myself a mustache. So. Um, That shows you my level of maturity and my level of humor. But so we talked about this guy. Um, Actually, we talked about Gurdjieff yesterday, but we were watching a video from this guy, I think yesterday too. Something about the paradox of how it was essentially Gurdjieff's system was a lot of Christianity with the deism stripped from it and the all the symbols stripped from it, and what this was what he was really pushing you down the direction of, which I thought was an interesting perspective. But yeah, this is just an introduction, so I think it'll give more of the ideas because that's really what I was looking for. Um, I think a lot of this stuff, like even some of the books you read, like you'll pick up a book by Steiner and it's more history than it is like interesting stuff. So it's like I hate history. I think history is so boring. Um, I don't think we know any real history. I think a lot of it's been hidden, and I think a lot of it's kind of just cyclical, and it's like I don't see a point in studying it. I want to learn about these interesting techniques. I want to learn about this philosophy. I want to learn about the depth of what these people knew and what these people understood. Oh Lord, just while this music's playing.
Are at the core of all that is most profound in religions, philosophies, and esoteric knowledge. He presents us with practical, uncompromising self-discovery, self-realization.
I think that's the most interesting part about Gurdjieff is it's not like these grand, like it's probably not the best example, but like you talk about like Crowley's telling you to do all these crazy things, but Gurdjieff's simply about like observing yourself, being present, knowing what you're doing while you're doing it, and kind of breaking yourself out of your habitual behavior and breaking yourself out of the necessity to move through this world unconsciously. And there's really something about that that's like so analogous to Heidegger or so analogous to Nietzsche or Emerson in some ways that I love the system he created. What's up, Sarath? How's everything?
And
Long time no see, right?
self-transcendence. Gurdjieff said the following about his ideas. This teaching is for those who are not satisfied with what they have found in life and who feel that there must be something else besides success and failure in life. And
That's a really interesting way of saying it. These teachings are for people that think there's something more because there's a depth of experience. There's a heightened awareness where you can kind of sense everything. And I think anybody interested in these types of ideas has already kind of experienced that, but experienced it almost drifting into that state versus inhabiting it at all times of the day. And it's a chase to get back there. It's a chase to get back to that level of awareness, I guess we'll say. Very happy to have the time to see you again. Well, I don't know if it's something you should be very gracious for. I feel like you're wasting your time. Like if this is the first time you have free time, I would be spending it doing it in something else. But it means the world to me that you would say something like that. Life's been tough. I'm sorry to hear that, but yeah, I mean, it's good to hear that you have a little bit of time to waste today watching my stream.
beyond what they have been taught in school and by their upbringing. The ideas that he brought to the West and the system of work on oneself, which came to be known simply as the work, have the power to
It's usually called the fourth way or the work. I'm pretty sure he'll use those terms interchangeably. There might be a little distinction, but I just whenever I see him say him or Uspensky or anyone else say it, I kind of just use it interchangeably.
Transform human consciousness and its understanding of reality. Anyone who begins to practice for a time the efforts of self-observation, divided attention, and
Self-observation is I can't explain divided attention to you in simple terms because it's difficult to explain, but self-observation I think is probably the most important, really the first steps to understanding Gurdjieff and understanding what he's trying to say. Gurdjieff would say that man is asleep, that man is a machine, and that to be awakened from the sleep to break the cycles of monotony and break the cycle of being a machine, you have to be aware of the machine. Because think of a car. Does a car know what a car is? It doesn't. And the moment you start becoming aware of the machine, the moment you start understanding its operations, the moment you can start to control it. And that's really the inklings, that's really the start of self-observation, is that you watch yourself at all times without any judgment. You watch what you're doing. You watch where your mind goes to. You watch what your body's doing. You watch your posture. You watch how you relax into things. You understand your breathing. You start to notice all sorts of these things, and then you start to be aware of them. And the more aware of them you are, the more conscious you are of life as a whole. And really, what I want you to think of as the antithesis of this is when you're sitting on your phone, when you're scrolling, when you lose an hour or 2 hours, or hopefully not more time than that, just mindlessly consuming, just mindlessly plopping yourself down in front of a TV and doing nothing. And I think that's a really, really, really destructive habit that we all do to ourselves. And really the reason why I find this so interesting is because I truly believe if we could focus just for a fraction of our day completely on a singular idea, we could fix that issue. We could fix what we were dealing with, but it's so difficult to get to that state. It's so difficult to get to that level of awareness. And it all starts with self-observation. It all starts with understanding where your time is going, understand where your attention is going, understand where your energy is going.
remembering, under the guidance of some
Self-remembering is it's a little bit harder to explain, but I'm streaming and I know I'm streaming. Like I'm reading and I know I'm reading. I'm doing something and I'm not allowing my mind to drift. I'm aware of what I'm doing at all times. I'm observing myself doing the thing while I'm doing it. Uh, the Taoists would call this Wu Wei or effortless action or inspired action. That sort of idea of
someone who
things.
has understood and lives the teachings will discover their radical impact on the human psyche. Gurdjieff essentially synthesized ancient esoteric teachings and made them approachable and applicable to the lives of rational Western individuals.
What's up, Simon? How's everything?
A seeker will find in his teachings an immeasurable treasure, the essence
The most interesting thing about Gurdjieff is like you could tell he picked and chose from all the sorts of stuff that he enjoyed. So he really traveled all of Asia, but he traveled throughout Asia, he traveled throughout the Caucasus Mountains and really picked up things from the Sufis. He picked up things from various other mystics from the Vedas, I'm sure. I don't know the exact terminology, but he went to these different sects and he kind of took the things that really inspired him and then was able to create and formulate his own sort of thing. He also had a his early upbringing, he was very um, institutionally educated. You wouldn't really know that because he doesn't really cite those things, but you can tell he definitely does have some sort of formal education. He also spoke a lot of languages as well. So, what's my educational background in what sense? I didn't
of
do
so
good in
many other
school
teachings, both
or
spiritual and
college.
psychological, on the inner life. This extraordinary system of thought, which ranges from the most intimate psychological insights to a grandiose cosmology linking the individual with the universe, is a synthesis of practices and teachings known as the Fourth Way. It is named the fourth way to differentiate it from the other ways of conscious evolution: the way of the monk, the way of the fakir, the way of the yogi.
So these are most commonly what we see as like enlightened individuals, or was I a lit student, like literature, or lit in the like the slang for cool? I haven't heard that word in so long, I forget what it means. But no, I did not study literature. I really only started like reading for myself, and that's I used to love when I was a kid reading, and it was like one of the coolest things to do because obviously, if you've watched me at all, you can tell I have a very strong imagination and a very strong love for creativity. But it was kind of like read out of me by the school system. You know, they hit you over the head with just the dumbest books possible and the least interesting ideas possible, and it completely just destroyed any will I had to read for myself. And it took me a very long time to even want to open up a book again, but I'm glad I did. And perhaps the fact that I took off for so long, and perhaps the fact that I really wasn't guided by the school system to read certain books, allowed me to kind of have my own sort of freedom in discovering things. Versus if I was forced to read certain authors, then I feel like I might have continued to read certain authors. Um, like school systems are huge on like Charles Dickens or John Steinbeck, and they're good. It's just it's not my thing. You know what I mean? It's just I don't. It doesn't speak to me. Maybe it will in the future, but like every time I've tried to read those two people, I've just been bored. Maybe I wasn't mature enough. Maybe I wasn't old enough. Maybe the messages weren't as apparent in my life, so they didn't resonate as much. But just you know what I mean? It's just like they don't really pick the books that are really hard hitting. One of the only books I read like to this day that I still really love is Crime and Punishment. I read that my senior year of high school. Finished Frankenstein since the last dream, and it's now a favorite. Onto the Phantom of the Opera. Is the I wonder, is the Phantom of the Opera good? Because isn't it like a play? So would that and isn't it like a kind of musical? So I would wonder how that would carry over to a book, unless it was adapted. But I've seen it on Broadway. Um, I knew nothing about it. I was much younger. I enjoyed it, but um, yeah, I love Frankenstein. I think Frankenstein is one of the best books ever written. Like genuinely, the themes in Frankenstein are some of the most important questions that humanity has to ask itself, and I don't think it's doing very well. Um, Essentially, my main takeaway from Frankenstein is scientific progress is disrupting the natural order of things and disrupting the natural way of life. Is that really in humanity's best interest? And I think you should give this book to people like Sam Altman, or who's the Palantir CEO? Peter Thiel. I know he's not the CEO, but Alex Karp is his name, I think. Or some of these other people that have some interesting ideas about humanity. School only teaches you the syllabus. Do that, you get good grades, not try to master. Yeah, I mean, that's just like, it's kind of a necessary evil for a school system because if you're going to standardize things and if you're going to teach certain things, then you kind of have to have a structured lesson plan or else you're going to kind of go off the rails. So it makes sense why, but in the long term, it really diminishes the actual education of people. It's like, it's one thing to say something, but it's another thing to do something. And I think that's the difference. What's up, Harsh? How's everything? The musical is based on an old novel. It was written by a French man. It's his translation I'm reading. Oh, okay. Okay. That's probably cool then. Okay. Okay, that's really interesting. Wish it wasn't that way. Questioning is important. Well, it will always just be that way because all school systems are nationalistic factories, basically. I mean, that came out of the old Prussian system where, 70% of soldiers were shooting at the enemy and aiming above their head to not kill them. And instead of having that, the Prussians invented kindergarten and took away the children earlier so that they didn't have as much compassion and that they were machines, as Gurdjieff would say, of the state. That's cool though. I didn't know Phantom of the Opera was a musical.
Each of these classic methods of human transformation focus on different aspects of the individual: emotional, instinctive, intellectual. The fourth way deals with all of these dimensions at once.
All right, so I missed explaining that. So there's the way the monk is deriving yourself of the worldly pleasures, deriving yourself of, think you don't eat, you don't speak, you don't drink water, you go up into the mountain and meditate for your whole life, and that's supposed to give you some sort of enlightenment. The way of the fakir, uh, it's really popular in India still, I think. Actually, I don't even know if it's popular in India. It's definitely not popular in the West, but it's essentially you punish your body physically so that you get some sort of enlightenment from that. And then you have the yogi who challenges their mind and does all sorts of mind tricks and mental practices in order to gain some sort of enlightenment. And Gurdjieff believed that there was a little bit of truth in all of these, and it was the combination of all of these that gave you the true mastery of the individual, the true mastery of their self. Like the yogi focused too much on the mind and not as much on the body. Which is funny because we think of yoga as something that's just purely the body, but it's really a spiritual practice. But the fakir knew all the things about the body, but didn't know about the mind or the spirit. And then the monk knew about the spirit or the soul, but not necessarily the ways in order to use that, the ways in order to master those things that they learned in order to use it for their own enlightenment, we'll say.
Seeking to create a balanced individual whose inner work of transformation.
You feel like you missed out on everything you could have learned, but also like you can learn about it now. I think learning things for yourself is like so much more interesting than having someone teach you. Like obviously like there's like I mean, I'm not talking about my channel, but there's great channels out there with like a lot of information that like if you're really interested in a subject, you can go find it. Like they give specialized lectures on what you are interested in, or there's people that devoted their entire life to studying a singular subject, so you can go read those books, or you could just go to the source itself and find your own interpretation of things. And I think that's so much more interesting than going to school and learning about it that fashion because I can spend as much time on what I want to spend on. If I'm reading a book and this section's not that interesting, well, I'm not going to read it with as much attention, or I'm not going to put it down and think about it as much as I will on a section that I'm completely fascinated by. And I think that's really the benefit of learning something for yourself. It's because you can put it down, you can sit on it, you can spend as much time as you want on a set idea or on a set belief. If you're studying Gurdjieff and you're really obsessed with a certain idea, you can study that for years. You don't have to just gloss over that and never talk about it again, which is what you'll get in school.
Occurs in the midst of his or her daily activities. There is no need for monasteries, ashrams, or physical asceticism. Yet the efforts made are as intense and demanding as any of the practices which take place in those settings. The work is entirely inner, invisible, and individual. Then there is the man himself. Gurdjieff was the archetypal master, beaming with extraordinary psychic powers developed in secret schools and monasteries somewhere between the Caucasus and the Himalayas.
If you read Gurdjieff, like he doesn't really most of the people that have the kind of I guess we'd say capacity as Gurdjieff, like whether you believe it or not, it's not necessarily like it doesn't really matter, but like there's all these accounts of Gurdjieff and all the crazy things he was able to do. Um and like most of the people that like will have those kind of stories are so like conceited. It's so weird because he doesn't really play himself up. He doesn't really put himself on a pedestal in the way you think he would, which I find so refreshing because I hate reading stuff and I'm like, all right, this guy's just kind of just delving into his own ego. He's kind of trying to build himself up and it's coming at the expense of his message and the things he's trying to say. What are my views on enlightenment? I mean, I don't think you can have views on enlightenment if you're not enlightened. You know what I mean? It's like what I don't necessarily know what you mean in that sense. Like, have there been enlightened people? Probably like a handful. I don't know, maybe 50 or 100, maybe 1,000 in history. Um, I don't know if there's anybody now alive that's considered enlightened. If they are, they're probably in some temple somewhere that uh, they're not even known about in the real world. But I think even like the idea of chasing enlightenment, it's not going to happen if you're chasing enlightenment. It's something that's just going to happen naturally. So like, believe me, I don't think anybody that's ever used the internet is going to become enlightened because our minds are already so poisoned. I think like if you grew up on a farm nowadays and you're away from technology, that you still have a chance, but I think we're all kind of screwed in that boat. So just it's the same thing as like talking about the afterlife. I don't love a light bulb. What do you mean? Um, think of like how much focus is put on like the afterlife or going to heaven and all sorts of stuff like that. Like it's the same thing with like enlightenment. It's like people put such an emphasis on it, they forget like the entire point is like, in pursuing becoming a better person, that's when you become worthy of heaven. In pursuing becoming a better person, that's when you become enlightened. Like it's something that's just going to happen, and I think we put too much emphasis on the end results. It's like anything, if I really wanted to get in my own head right now about well, there's not enough people here in the stream or this or that, like I can, but I'm also just having fun doing what I like doing. And to me, like the stream is going to be better if I worry about having fun versus worrying about the numbers and the statistics and all sorts. You know what I mean? I think we put too much emphasis on the damn results, and I think we got to stop worrying about the damn results so much.
Brutal, soul shattering insights, marvelous humor, which was both ribald in the extreme and breathtakingly penetrating. He also had a capacity for love that was matched only by his ability to express rage. He was a master hypnotist, a master actor, a master healer. Those who encountered him often had opposite ideas of who he was.
The different stories of him are just so hilarious. I think it's from In Search of the Miraculous. I think that's where this is from, but it could be from Meetings with Remarkable Men. No, it's definitely from In Search of the Miraculous because of the way it was told. But there was like this mystic or occultist that was like famous in the community, and he had heard about Gurdjieff, and he goes to visit Gurdjieff at like his house or shop or something, and Gurdjieff was like, I don't know how to explain, but like he would just do random stuff for money. Like he was always in need of money. Like he was trying to set up his institute. That was really his whole life purpose. And he was traveling around the world, so he'd always have to do these odd jobs to like gain money. So he would like buy rugs in one area of the world, repair them, and then bring them to another. And like he would sell them for more money. Like that was how he was funding his mission and his purpose and all the travel and all the people he was taking care of. But this occultist or this mystic comes up to Gurdjieff and he's like, I've heard all of these powers that you have and all these things you can do. Why don't you show me? He's like, oh no, no, no. I'm just a traveling salesman. And he like changed his tone of voice, he changed his body posture, and he convinced this guy that he was just this salesman that had a really good mystique around him and really good marketing. And the guy didn't even know who he was dealing with. It was just one of the funniest things I've ever heard. But it's the quality that matters. I don't even think I have quality. That's the well, I'm talking about quality of production. Obviously, I think I'm saying interesting things, but the quality of production is not there yet. The problem is, I feel like the higher your quality of production, the less authentic you are. You know what I mean? Like the nicer studio you have, the more you have to pay to keep the lights on. Where I can do this for forever. I'm paying no money to do this right now. Maybe electricity, but there's no cost associated with this. I'm using my laptop that's like 6 years old that's overheating right now and a $100 microphone. So I could say whatever I want. It doesn't matter. I don't have investors. I don't have people backing me.
usually as a result of his own intentional behavior. He sometimes gave the impression of being a simple charlatan to arrogant individuals who would come to question him,
I literally just told that story.
while
I
to
hate how I do that every
others he
time.
was the most enlightened man they would ever encounter. This powerful master with eyes that pierced to the depths of the soul was
There's a famous story of him meeting Crowley, and I've tried to track down where it's from, but I couldn't find it. Um, I really didn't do that much research. I spent 5 minutes. If I can't find something in 5 minutes, it doesn't exist. I really need to like get better at that because I feel like I want to start intentionally researching certain topics more deeply instead of just stumbling upon them at some point.
also an old man whose pockets were full of candy for the children. This mysterious outsider who revealed new horizons that tore down society's social conventions and cherished beliefs was also closely, though secretly, associated to the Russian Orthodox community in Paris. Several important teachers in their own right were born from his tutelage. P.D. Uspensky is the most famous one. He presented the work from a more intellectual perspective.
I think Uspensky was necessary for Gurdjieff and especially to spread his ideas because Gurdjieff's like just something about him. It's he's a very difficult person to get along with. We all know that kind of person that is in our life that we love them but we hate them at the same time. And there's that character to Gurdjieff where you don't know what side you're gonna get because he would intentionally piss you off to give you some sort of reaction to break you out of some sort of habit. And there's all these things that the live name random letters. Gurdjieff is literally he's like one of the most famous mystics of all time. That's not random letters. I love the idea of learning something on your own for years, trying to master it. The only thing that comes to mind is chess. I mean, you it's crazy how Bino thinks we're wasting our time watching this. We kind of are. I mean, in certain ways, you're like always wasting your time, and I think there's better uses of your time. Like, is it better for you to watch my stream or like talk to your family? Is really my point. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you could have a very deep conversation with your family and tell the people in your life how much you love them, or you could watch my stream. So, like, in essence, I think nothing's as important as those kind of things. So, you know what I mean? Did look at the guy that's next to me in the picture. I was replicating his mustache. I thought you would enjoy that. I literally did that just for you, and you didn't enjoy it.
Though it still remained very practical. His book, In Search of the Miraculous, is one of the best expressions of the work ideas available to us. Other leading students included Rodney Collin and Maurice Nicole. Both have written remarkable books that shed light on what is now called the Gurdjieff-Uspensky work.
I'm shocked you didn't say Bennett or Casey. I think those are two names that are also closely associated. You did think it's very funny. Yeah, that was the whole point of it. It was like it got you to click. Dude, I literally only did this stream because I was like, wouldn't it be so funny for me to talk about Gurdjieff and give myself a fake mustache? That was the only reason I did this stream. Like 100%. I put in effort and I answer all your questions. I mean, I feel like there's other people that do that. I mean, maybe you like my answer. No, I understand what you're saying, but I put in effort, but I don't at the same time because I like to keep it open-ended. I think I do best when it's open-ended and I can kind of I think I'm more interesting in conversations than I am in like presenting ideas. Is an easier way to say that. So like for me the best format for me to get my ideas across is through saying things and people saying, "Well, what about this? What about this?" And then I can expand upon it. I think that's a much more interesting format. And you know, most of my inspiration for what I do is what would I want to see a few years ago? What would get me closer to where I am now a few years ago? What would guide me in the right direction? You thought I was the evil man from World War II. Can people not have mustaches anymore, man? Like, how do you get banned for saying that name too? I mean, I guess maybe it's the context, but YouTube's like kind of weird though, because like you can say certain things that are just so horrendous, and then certain topics just get like flagged because I don't know, man. I feel like advertising is just ruining everything. Like there was a time where the internet was like so much more um democratized and open and not like this one big conglomerate. What's another thing like chess that you can master? Um, really anything. I mean, chess is an easy example, but you can master speaking, which I don't think I've done. You can master writing, you can master martial art, you can master some sort of physical hobby. Amen about ads. I say this as I literally have ads turned on this stream. The only reason I have ads on this stream though is I put them as low as possible, just so like I don't want people to do, you know what I mean? I don't want people to give me money. Let the conglomerate give me money. Don't give me money. Did I ever tr have trouble with procrastination? I have trouble with procrastination now. I mean, the thing with procrastination is like there's a reason you're avoiding it, and get to the root of that reason, and then you'll understand why you're pushing it off. But like other things you can master are, a martial art or some sort of physical, think of like ballet or dance or something like this. Something that's difficult, something that's hard. That's what you want to start mastering because once you can get good at something that's difficult, then you can understand the process. It's there's this like dumb idea where people are like, well, I'm not book smart, I'm street smart. It's like if you have to say that you're still an idiot, like believe me, like just because you sold drugs when you were younger doesn't make you very smart, dude. That's what that always means. Whenever somebody says that to me, I'm just like, oh, so you sold drugs when you were younger? Like that's what street smart means. But there's there's uh there's something about when you do more things in life, you have more experience to pull from. So when you know how to get good at one thing, then you know how to take that same fire, take that same passion into other things. And for me, really the first thing that I got, I'm still not good at it, but like the first thing I learned how to do that with was probably like jujitsu or the gym or something like that. Like you slowly see yourself develop, you slowly see yourself get better, and in real time you can feel yourself understanding these concepts more and more and understanding how to maneuver yourself in a different way more and more. And then you could take that same sort of passion or approach to something else. And I really take the same approach to anything I want to get good at in life is that I start at a certain point. I understand that, okay, it's going to be difficult, but it's going to get easier and easier and easier. And the first step's always the hardest. The first step's always the most difficult one because the first step you're looking at the 1,000th step and it's so daunting and it's right in front of you. This goes for procrastination as well. I love how we came full circle where I'm talking about procrastination. But in order for you to get to the 1,000th step, you have to take the first step. So if you're procrastinating with something, literally open the project you have to work on and look at it. You don't have to do anything. I promise you, if you just open the project and look at it, now it's a lot less scary because in your mind you were building it up to be something so insurmountable. But when you actually look at the project, I promise you it's not as impossible as you think. Because at the very least, now you can start thinking about what you're going to do. At the very least, you can start planning out how you're going to approach this problem. So the real solution to procrastination is literally just open the project and look at it. Because that's the first step. The second step's easier than the first step. The first step's always the hardest. But yeah, somehow I got around to that to answer your question as well.
Nicole's psychological commentaries on the teachings of Gurdjieff and Uspensi consists of a 5-volume set of essays that cover the minute details of working on oneself. Gurdjieff called this path the way of
You can't deal with regret. Well, if you're struggling with regret, then you're not going to move forward. If you're struggling with regret, then that means you didn't learn your lesson from the past mistake. Regret is looking at a past mistake and thinking you could have done better, but the truth is you can't do better. You were armed with a certain set of information at that time and you acted, and maybe you made a mistake, but to your knowledge you made the right decision. I can look back at a billion things in my life and say if I did this differently, I would be here instead. What good does that do me? The only thing you can learn from the past is how to be better in the future. If I start, I never stop, but the start is the hardest part. I've been off the line for a long time. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just like take the easiest step. Make the hardest thing the easiest, which is just picking up that paper, walking into the gym, signing up for that class, enrolling yourself in whatever program that you were afraid to enroll. Send that application. Like literally do the first step and everything else is easy. That's really the reality of life. Seneca has this quote, and I would share a different quote because I feel like I've shared this 1,000 times, but I keep fucking sharing it because it's so damn important. It really is just you'll never get over this singular idea, and for this idea alone, I think Seneca will always be remembered. It's we suffer more in our imagination than we do in reality. We suffer more in our imagination than we do in reality. I'm going to say it one more time because it's just I need to reiterate it. We suffer more in our imagination than we do in reality. And what that means is it is so much easier to always imagine the worst case scenario. But when has anything ever been as bad as you thought it was? I am deathly afraid of heights, and every time I've gone on a roller coaster, I literally have the fear of God in me. I literally think I'm gonna die. But then I go on the roller coaster, my eyes are closed the whole time. I'm not gonna lie about that. But afterwards, I'm like, okay, it wasn't as bad as I imagined it to be. It's always easier than you think it is.
of the sly man. This term is a poor translation of the French le rusé, which has a less negative implication.
You're saying wow that I'm afraid of heights. I know it's really ironic how tall I am and I'm afraid of heights. That's really the greatest quote. I don't know if it's the greatest quote. There's a few quotes that I put up there. That one might be the one I say the most. I might use that quote the most, but Emerson has some really good ones. Every door is a wind. No, every wall is a door. I butchered that so bad. Money often costs too much. You have Walt Whitman, obey little, resist much. Um, the Dostoevsky one, which is your greatest sin is that you have betrayed yourself for absolutely nothing. Um, there's a lot of really good ones. Thanks for the stream. Back to work. Pleasure listening for a bit. Yeah, thanks for being here, JD Dog. I was like thinking of how to read that. I'm like, wait, it's just JD Dog. I'm an idiot. Yeah, you get back to work and do some real stuff instead of me wasting my time here.
And might better be translated as clever in transforming the difficulties of the moment into opportunities for spiritual awakening. Similar to the Zen Buddhist masters and their saying that each moment is the best of opportunity, Gurdjieff wanted his students to learn how to use the circumstances of each moment, both the internal and the external, as food for the development of a new state of consciousness. According to the fourth way, the central obstacle to higher levels of consciousness is a phenomenon known as identification. Uspensky describes it in this manner.
You imagine a person consoling you every time you're lonely? Bro, just be lonely. Okay. I don't know if it's necessarily the greatest way to go about it, because like I think you should be okay with or a cat that comes to snuggle. All right, I think you're. How bad did she hurt you, man? Um, jokes aside, I'm just laughing because it's just funny. But I think we should be okay with loneliness. I think like if you can't be alone with yourself, if you can't be happy while you're alone, then you can't be happy with other people. Because there was something I would experience when I was much younger is that when I was alone, I wanted to be surrounded by people. When I was in a crowd, I wanted to be alone. And I think we kind of just have to accept things. I think we kind of just have to go with things. And if you're not happy with who you are when you're alone, you're not gonna be happy with who you are when you're with people. So I think just starting to change the way you see these things and starting to be more appreciative and just when you're alone, you don't have to deal with people ruining your attention. You don't have to deal with small talk. You don't have to talk about the weather. Like there's good things about being alone. Like I can't stand small talk, and because of that I love being alone at times. But then there's other times that where I'm surrounded by people where I enjoy talking about nonsense. Like it's just I think you kind of just have to accept where you are and kind of come to grips with where you are because it's like there's like a lot of people that rush into relationships. Like I've seen so many people that like can't not be in a relationship. Like the minute they break up with somebody, they're on to somebody new because they're not okay with being alone. And their relationships keep failing because they're not okay with themselves. They're not okay with being a singular person. They need to be part of something. And that's detrimental as well. Don't know where it's from, but how you spend your days, how you spend your life. It's both the most mindset and behavior altering sentence I've heard, and also the most terrifying one I've heard in my life. Well, doesn't that often go hand in hand? Like something that really speaks to you is both terrifying and amazing because it's you. It's your responsibility. It's your task. It's nothing nobody can do. There's nothing anybody can do for you that's going to make you enjoy your life. Something you have to do for yourself. Being lonely is 10 times better than being with people. Being lonely in a crowd of thousands. Dude, the larger the crowd, the less I feel at home. Do you think it bothers you that I'm not good at small talk? No, it's not that I'm not good at small talk, it's just I don't care about the weather. You know what I mean? Like I could do small talk. I could talk to you about mundane things all day long, but it's just uh, I hate how in every conversation it has to start with small talk. I hate how it's not I hate how you can't just get into interesting things. Like why do I have to deal with the formalities? Is this a job interview? That's what I don't like about small talk is that, you're my friend. Why do I have to go through this little nonsense of, oh, what's up? How you doing? This, but like if it comes up in conversation, it comes up in conversation and I'll remember it. But if it's not important enough for you to bring it up to me, then it's not important. It's a double-edged sword, but how do I start a conversation? You start talking to people, man. Like what? It's one of those things. It's like, have you ever been at a bar and your friend's like, I like that girl, and then you go, we'll go talk to her, and then he says, what do I say to her? Well, then just don't go talk to her. You know what I mean? Like if you don't know what to say, you don't know what to say. If you don't know what to say, then don't start a conversation. Like it should just come naturally. It should just flow. I mean, we're talking about like these are things that like are very difficult to explain, but there's just a certain reality to it. It's like if you're even questioning what to say to somebody, you're probably not gonna have an interesting conversation. If you're nervous to talk to somebody, you're bringing that nervousness into whatever you have to say, and it's not gonna work, man.
manner. In this state, man has no separate awareness. He is lost in whatever he happens to be doing, feeling, thinking. Because he is lost, immersed, not present to himself, this condition.
And what he's saying, immersed, it's you're on your phone and you forget you're on your phone. You're reading a book and you forget that you're reading a book. You're watching a movie and you forget that you're watching a movie. It's that sort of idea of things. You allow your consciousness to drift. You allow your mind to drift. And I'm almost certain, no, I am certain, Gurdjieff would agree that your attention is your most important aspect to yourself. If you could gain a mastery of your attention, you can gain a mastery over anything. If you really could devote 100% of your mind to a given task, then nothing is. an issue, but it's training ourselves and it's getting ourselves to that point that is the most difficult thing. And I was mentioning this earlier. There's really two steps to this. It's first observing yourself without any sort of judgments. It's looking at your habits. It's looking at the things you do. It's seeing the mechanicalness of your life, and then it's learning about these things. It's observing these things, and eventually get to a point where you're watching yourself do something. I know I'm streaming and I'm watching myself stream. I don't know if I use the right words. I'm aware I'm streaming while I'm streaming. I think that's a better way of saying it.
Is known as a state of waking sleep. When we are identified, our attention is directed outward and we are lost to ourselves. Self awareness is then a state in which we become aware of ourselves and are no longer hypnotized by the external events before us.
Okay, and this is an idea that I feel like people are like starting to recognize. Like, talk to somebody that you despise. It's always easy to observe somebody you hate the most because it's just you don't well maybe it might be more difficult because they make you angry, but just somebody you're indifferent to, notice what they're saying, notice what they're talking about, listen to their words, and you can pretty much guess what kind of news they watch or what kind of content they consume. Like you realize their ideas aren't their own, they're ideas that have been imparted to them. Whereas somebody that's more psychologically developed will say, you kind of don't know where they're coming from. You're surprised by what they have to say. You're surprised by, you thought something about them, but they said something completely different and they changed their opinion. That's a sign that somebody's more developed. Whereas if you can guess what somebody has to say, you can understand they're hypnotized. You can understand that they're set in their ways, that they've been programmed in a certain way, that they believe a certain thing. I remember finding beauty in every single object, imagining how I draw it, yet everything looks and feels the same now. Well, yeah, that's growing up, man. Nothing is original. In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. I think all statements like that are kind of yes and not yes or no. But to what you said, Sarab, it's growing up. What does growing up mean? Means accepting the systems of enslavement. When I mean enslavement, I'm talking about capturing your mind, capturing the way you think about things, instilling certain doctrines, instilling certain dogma that make you become a mold instead of yourself. Take you away from your true essence, take you away from your true imagination and creativity. When I was little, I remember I used to be able to play all day in the sandbox and have the most insane adventures ever. And like now, if I try to do that now, like please lock me up. Not actually, but two, like I don't have that same rose-colored glasses that I once had. And it was kind of your imagination's kind of beat out of you by you have to do this, you have to do this. I raise my hand, I have to raise my hand to go to the bathroom. I can't just go to the bathroom. Oh, I don't dismiss or the bell doesn't dismiss you, I dismiss you. Have you ever I don't know if other countries have bells, but like the bells in school literally are to hypnotize you to when you hear the bell at the factory to get up and go to where you're supposed to go. It's the most insane programming that you'll, you'll ever stumble upon. It's like when we talk about hypnosis, when we talk about programming, it's everything I say to you, everything anybody else says to you, it pulls you in a certain direction. And they're all low levels of hypnosis, but you repeat something enough times and it becomes habit. You have limited mobility and it just gave you a purpose. Well, try to come back to it. You know what I mean? I think if it made you happy when you're young, it's definitely gonna make you happy when you're old. And even if it's not like you don't have to do the exact same thing, but I think you could find something analogous to that. I think you could find something similar to that. Gotta go. Have a good rest of your stream. Well, thank you for being here. It was a fun time. You asked some good questions and gave me that good quote. So Yeah, I'll catch you in the next stream, hopefully.
There is a higher level still to be reached, which the work calls objective consciousness. In this state,
I mean, is it what school teaches or what society teaches? There's a certain set of things that you could do right now that would immediately get you ostracized from society. And there doesn't need to be a law in order to institute that. That's just a part of it. And like, there's a certain, it's not, they're not necessarily insidious. It's just natural development. It's just a natural herd defense mechanism. If you have somebody doing something that's counter to the interests of the group, then people are going to kick that person out of the group. It's just how things work. It's not something you get away from. It's not something that is necessarily good or bad. You could maybe start saying that, but it starts from school. It doesn't even start from school. It starts with the way your parents raise you. It starts with the medical procedures that people do to you when you're a child. It starts with literally when you're born. Like babies used to be born and there's like water births, there's natural births, there's that sort of stuff. You're taken away from your mother when you're young. What is that but psychological trauma? Like it doesn't start with school. It's everything. It's literally everything. And again, it's not good or bad. Some things are good, some things are bad. It just is what it is. Do I think it's important for the society? I mean, I don't really care about society. I don't really see like obviously there's a point in society because it prevents lawlessness, but there really shouldn't be a necessity for society if people actually develop themselves properly. Society is only necessary because people go rob and steal and cheat and do all the stupid things that are against their own interest, but they're not smart enough to understand that. So it's like I think it's just a necessary evil, and I think it's like there. I saw a quote the other day, and it was geniuses and criminals both break the rules because they see how dumb they are. And that's really the point I'm trying to advocate. Is that a lot of the laws don't make sense, but they're in place because people aren't really smart enough to govern themselves. That's just really how it is. But
we come into contact with the real world from which we are cut off by the senses. Some psychologists deny the existence of higher states of consciousness, dismissing them as dream states. But in order to reach the more silent areas of consciousness, what the work calls our higher centers, we must get beyond the noisy regions of our minds in which we spend so much of our time. The attainment of higher levels of consciousness is closely related to certain religious practices which are found in all cultures, such as meditation and contemplation.
meditation or prayer or any sort of practice that kind of centers you or brings you back to a calming state. That's really a lot of the basis of a lot of rituals, we'll say, or again, rituals or hypnosis, but these are all like mental tricks, kind of. Think of all these things as mental tricks. Have I heard of remote viewing? Yes, I have. I mean, there's two. There's astral projection and remote viewing, and I forget which one is better. I forget which one is like more accurate. But again, all these things are like I don't recommend you do, um, but I can't stop. You know what I mean? Just I don't think you really want to develop any of these psychic abilities, and if you do, don't tell anybody you do. So
These are difficult paths to tread because our attention is always being caught by the ceaseless chattering in our heads. Yet it is possible to become receptive to a state of pure consciousness without thought, a state in which truth is revealed to us directly, without the use of words. One of the most practical and meticulous studies of the ideas of this.
this reminds me a lot of like the Sufi mystic poetry. Why not? Well, there's okay. Whenever you get like it's like anything, there's groups of people that like it's just one of those things like if you're a millionaire, don't tell people you're a millionaire because they'll start asking you for money. It's just one of those things. You know what I mean? It's just like it's like anything. These things are like there's some. evil people that are involved in these things, and they might try to, it's just there's all sorts of stories of why you shouldn't. You can Google them. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but
inner work on oneself.
there's like even with meditation, there's like a lot of cases of people becoming schizophrenic. So it's like that's why I just don't think it's really worth it. It's like the same thing as like psychedelics. It's like there's tons of people that say it's like a illuminating experience, but there's also a lot of people that are in padded cells because they did them. So it's like, is it really worth it? Not really. I think you could get that same sort of um, state of consciousness from pure meditation. Um, but you know, I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do with your life, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's like anything, me saying that like it might, you know, is hopefully you take that warning.
Is found in Maurice Nicole's masterful psychological commentaries. Here the reader will come upon the nuts and bolts of transformation.
I need to look up this book.
Nicole states somewhere in these 5 volumes of lectures given to his students that as you make progress in the work, what you took as yourself begins to look like a little prison house far away in the valley beneath you. This is a vivid expression of the third state of consciousness, or self-remembering as it is called. These flashes of greater consciousness are the unexpected results of the strenuous efforts made in order not to lose oneself.
So again, I can start to explain these things, but it's just if you know what he's talking about, you know what he's talking about. If you don't know, it's not really going to make sense. Uh, think of your best moments in your life, and I'm not talking about achievement wise. I'm talking about your happiest moments, like what was happening. Not you weren't thinking about the world, you were just experiencing. That's a higher state of consciousness per se.
In the rush of outer circumstances, to be cleansed from the acids of negativity, and to maintain a heightened awareness grounded in the present. Uspensky told his students that it is only when we realize that life is taking us nowhere that it begins to have meaning.
It only occurs to us when life is taking us nowhere that it begins to have meaning. That's a really interesting saying. Because we have this conception that you do the right things, you'll be rewarded for it, but then you hit a certain point, you see that's not necessarily the truth. You see it's not really the safe path. You see that it's the safe path for this imaginary archetype, but it's not really the safe path for your sanity.
This observation is not a philosophy, but a pragmatic realization which can fundamentally alter our perception of ourselves and of the world around
I heard
us.
of Baba Fakir Chan. No, I've
Maurice
not.
Nicole gives a hint of these first stages
There's
of
there's
real
like so many
change
mystics I haven't heard of. Um,
in
I
his
can look them up.
commentaries. This gradual withdrawal of energy from the customary, easily resentful and brittle feeling of I is accompanied by a gradual new and broader feeling of I, as if one were living in a larger.
So he's saying is this broader feeling of eyes that think of it as we divert our attention most of the day, and those little moments where we know who we are, we know what we want to do, we know what we want to be. I don't know if that makes any sense. Let me think of an example, but think of your mind as a battery. Think of your sort of life as that battery's being drained each day, and and imagine you're able to focus that energy onto something. Imagine you're able to get past all the noise. Imagine, you don't check TikTok when you first wake up. You don't check the news. You don't check anything. You're just driven on a singular goal. You're driven on a singular idea. You're reading a book and you don't put it down to check your phone, to check your text messages. You know, you're doing something and that's all you're doing. Is really what it's saying. Give me a minute, I'll be right back. I'm back. Please read some Baba Fakir. I hope I'm saying that right. I know I'm not. It's so bad how limited my knowledge is in other languages. Like I'll read something I know I'm saying it wrong. Damn, he lived to 95, 94. Oh, he came to the US. It says he died in Pittsburgh. Okay, seems interesting. I'll look at him.
Place. It is like being introduced to a new civilization, to another form of life. He points out that by using the inner camera of self-observation, we begin to open a mind above the level of the sensual mind. Self
We begin to open a mind above the sensual. Okay. You could say this is the crown chakra. There's differing opinions on what this could be, but there's some relationship to that. But again, what is he saying? What is he saying you're doing? And I want you to think about like your best moments. When I say best moments, your best performances. Think of yourself as like an actor in a play, and when did you feel like you had mastery over life the most? When did you feel like you were just watching yourself and just allowing it to occur? Because we all have these moments where it seems like something is acting through us and we're just watching. And that's what this is. This is the state of self-observation. It's that you are so present that you get to this higher state of awareness, this higher state of I I hate saying state of consciousness, but it's really the only way to say it is that you're thinking and you're accessing your creative faculties with the benefit of your analytical faculties. You are able to pull from intuition, you're able to pull from your collective memories.
remembering, then, is a process of being lifted out of our ordinary sense of self into a purified, detached space well known to those long practiced in meditation. But in the fourth way, this birth of new awareness can be accomplished while one crosses a city street or takes out the trash.
This reminds me a lot of Taoism, where like Taoism kind of has the same ideas as the other Eastern religions, but it focuses it on pure presence instead of meditation. And when you have this heightened level of awareness in what you're doing, it makes everything enjoyable. I'm training jujitsu and I'm only thinking about jujitsu because I have to. If I'm not thinking about what I'm doing, if I'm thinking about what I'm going to eat for dinner, then someone's going to break my arm. And you kind of lose yourself in this moment. That's why physical activity is so enjoyable because this heightened fight or flight nervous system state kind of forces you to become more aware, kind of forces you to fixate on a certain activity. And this is why people get addicted to thrill seeking as well. It's you kind of hack your nervous system to get extremely afraid, and in that state of fear, in that state of fight or flight, you have some sort of higher level of awareness, and that moment feels like it lingers forever because it does, because you're actively slowing down time. Is philosophy better than psychology? Yes and no. Psychology is just philosophy applied to the mind, kind of. Like psychology really is just like if you read a lot of Freud, who is the founder of psychology, he just rips off Schopenhauer and rips off Goethe. Um, a lot of his ideas, he's citing those two guys. Um, so there's very much a lot of carryover. Um, I think they both have their uses, but they both have their limitations. Philosophy, the more you get into philosophy, the more boring it gets, and the less interesting the questions are. Um, and at a certain point of philosophy, the only way you can understand the issue is through mysticism, and philosophers don't get that. And then they become like Nietzsche and basically drive themselves mad because they can't figure it out. And psychology is limited by its inability to understand the human spirit and understand mysticism. So they're both limited by their inability to see the deeper layers of reality and the deeper states of being that exist, and they want to explain everything through words when we know words can't capture the feeling of love. We know words can't capture the feeling of hate or the feeling of anxiety or the feeling of even being. I mean, think of how many philosophies are devoted to the explanation of what is being. What does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to observe something? I mean, I can literally cite off 10 philosophers right now that their entire work is devoted to that idea, and they barely start to scratch the surface with that sort of idea of things. So, I mean, it's an interesting question. I don't know which one's better. I don't know if you could say which one's better. I think they both have their place and they both have their limitations.
Nevertheless, despite the practical approach of the work, self remembering remains as intangible and paradoxical as any spiritual exercise. Reminiscent of the Zen koan, Rodney Collin told his students that we cannot remember ourselves until we forget ourselves.
We cannot remember ourselves until we forget ourselves. What does this mean? Do they lack systems thinking? No, the systems are the problem. Whenever you have a system, it's rigid. Even Gurdjieff's system, you can loosely call it a system. There's a few guidelines that everything is derived from, but there's a paradoxical nature to it. And I think that there's truth in paradox. I mean, what is light without dark? That's just a there's fundamental things that you can't observe. People like Nietzsche. I mean, Nietzsche's problem was he didn't get respected. I mean, I think some of his ideas are some of the closest human beings will come to philosophically understanding the universe. I mean, the eternal recurrence alone is like proof he was onto something, or the will to power, which is really just the will to live. Like those really describe human behavior and kind of give us a new system to move forward with as people start to lose faith in the old ones. But even him, he's limited because he's very analytical. He doesn't give much to the spirit or much to um, forces that we can't really understand.
And at the height of his powers of understanding, he united the fourth way with the wisdom of all times and places. To feel beauty, to feel truth, that is self remembering.
Okay, what I was saying is to remember yourself is to forget yourself. And are you really forgetting yourself, or are you forgetting who the world told you you are? Think of people who enter into the conversation and their argument is, well, I went to school for this, so that means I'm smarter than you and I'm better than you. And it's like you'll never have a decent conversation with somebody that goes off that basis because they're not even listening to you. So to forget yourself is to remember who you really are because you're forgetting what been conditioned to believe about yourself. Osho said Nietzsche is the only one close to understanding enlightenment without being enlightened. Um, yes and no. I see why he's saying that. There is something to Nietzsche. I mean, I just like the problem with Nietzsche is he like went mad at like I think he was like 44 when he started to go crazy. So like it kind of like we don't see the natural progression of him. We don't see him become respected. We don't see him grow as an individual and that sort of things. He's kind of like always undervalued and like his writing always kind of comes from that place. But yeah, there's something there, like what PhD holders talk. Yeah, I mean, I understand where it comes from. It's because they've been rewarded in that system and that's why they believe that sort of way. But it's just there's like you're never gonna get to the real truth of things if you never let someone else talk. Because even if the person's completely wrong, there's three sides to every story. There's your side, my side, and the truth. And even if it's 99% my side, maybe they make a decent point. Maybe they make a point like, hey, you're too strong on this one prong of your argument. You need to lighten up a little bit here. There's a little bit more room for compassion or understanding. And I think that's really a lot of the problem because people associate ideas and beliefs with themselves. So whenever you insult their ideas, they insult themselves. It's really the main problem with things. If you say something bad about something I believe, I don't really care. It doesn't really affect me. It doesn't really mean anything to me. Even if you say something about me, it doesn't mean it's like if I maybe you have some genuine criticism. And like if I neglect everything you say because you said it in a mean way, then I can't grow, then I can't learn. So what's the point for me to get mad and get angry when there's a layer of truth in everything? You know what I mean? Like if I get a bad comment, I'll read it and I'll try to see it from their perspective and try to see what I said wrong. And then I'll try to correct it next time. I won't necessarily engage with it, but sometimes your haters have the best advice for you.
So,
Think the person that despises you is going to tell you the truth more than the person that loves you. They know a lot about one part or a subject, but they say they know everything about it and look down on others. Yeah, well, that's the entire, like, there's this entire idea that you have to listen to experts. And the whole point of that is to make people very compartmentalized so they don't understand the big picture. And when they don't understand the big picture, then it's easier to trick them and fool them. I mean, it's very simple psychological tactics and very simple psychological programming. They know a branch of a branch, yeah. No, for sure. But it's important to like listen to everybody. It's important to learn a lot of different things because it's only when we can pull and contrast and compare things that we can really get a deeper understanding of stuff.
remembering is the awareness of the presence of God. Gurdjieff broke through the dogma of institutional religion and revealed the dynamic truth within the teachings. He made clear the psychological insights beneath the rust of rote repetition and blasphemous misuse of the words of enlightened teachers. His insistence on verification forced the student to come upon the stunning fact that life is indeed more than that which the senses perceive, and to reinterpret spiritual insights in the context of their own.
This has no relevance to what he's saying right now, but one of the funniest things about Gurdjieff is that once he established his institution, he would like he would have all these like really famous like respected people come to his school to learn things, and then he'd be like, "Okay, we're gonna go dig out in the backyard." And what he's doing is he's testing them. He's testing if they will, in their eyes, degrade themselves because think these people are intellectuals. They think so highly of themselves. Will they get their hands dirty? And there's some sort of spiritual involvement that they'll get from lowering themselves to the level of something they think is beneath them. It is very genius and it is very wise on how to weed out people that are either going to understand what you're saying versus disregard what you're saying.
Own lives. Belief was to give way to experience, and experience to transformation, so that the new man could emerge out of the ashes of rejected illusions. Gurdjieff tore through our most cherished beliefs with astonishing force and irreverence, stung our vanities with brutal honesty, and called us to that ultimate
So another reason why people didn't like him is he was very honest. Like most of the time when you go to like a spiritual person, you think they're going to be all nice and cheerful and all these sorts of things. And there is a methodology to that, but what Gurdjieff was trying to do is break you out of your enslavement. I was trying to think of a better word, but that's the best word. Break you out of your chains, break you out of your mechanicalness, and break you out of your habits. And he would do all sorts of weird things. Like there's one activity where it's the freezing I forget what it's called, but it's like every so often he would tell his students to freeze, and regardless of what they would do, like regardless of what they were doing, they would have to freeze. So one guy was smoking a cigarette and he had to sit there with the cigarette in his mouth and it started burning him. And then only after so long he was able to move. And it's very interesting to start thinking about these ideas and thinking about their
journey
implications.
toward the consciousness of who we are and who we are meant to be. Behind the exotic masks of this oriental magician, rogue, teacher was great compassion. Children and animals sensed it, while seekers of all classes and types found healing and new life from his sometimes bizarre requirements. Gurdjieff came to wake us with
That's even what led to his split with Uspensky, who very famously broke away from Gurdjieff and still preached his system, but tried to divorce it from Gurdjieff, which in some ways is beneficial because there's a lot of groups that are limited by its necessity to put forward the leader instead of push forward the ideas. And when it becomes about the leader instead of the ideas, then it becomes a cult. Whereas I think Gurdjieff's system is a system. It's not a religion. It's a practice that can purify your mind and make the most out of your mind.
uncompromising affection and a
And that's why you see people like Robert Anton Wilson. I don't necessarily think he's atheist. He would claim to be atheist, but he really ate up a lot of the stuff Gurdjieff has to say, and he cites him all the time in his
assist
writing.
us in accessing our deeper selves. No one walks away unchanged from the teachings of this intense master who has taught us to discover someone even more elusive than himself, the true nature of our being.
Okay, good video. I think it's a perfect place to end it because I have somewhere to be in a little bit, so I'm gonna leave you guys on that. Thank you guys for being here. Very fun stream. I think I'm gonna start doing more shorter streams like this. I do have to work in the longer streams where we go through more interesting stuff. But that said, have a good rest of your day, guys. Thank you guys for being here. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next one.